A young teen, after finding very disturbing and compromising pictures of his father on his computer, decided to confront the man about them. Afterwards, he was never heard from again. Today's video was sponsored by Casetify. Casetify was born 10 years ago from a simple idea: turn our Instagram photos into custom phone cases. Now, as the world's most popular tech accessory brand, Casetify relies on design-first approaches to fuel craftsmanship and innovation all across the world. EcoShock technology is embedded in their iPhone 14 Impact series to protect your phone all throughout your daily life. With over 20% increased protection, it's still really slim. It's just fine in your hands and fits great into back pockets. The Impact series is the best solution for everyday protection. It's 5 times stronger than the military standard and provides up to 11.5 feet of drop height. It's the optimal protection while still maintaining the sleekness. Check out how I dropped this phone and it's perfectly fine. The Artist Program features exclusive partnered artists from a pool of diverse global partners supporting local artist communities. Check out all of these cool ones. I like this design in particular. And you can even check out this snazzy Diretrip case. Casetify also offers a good line of accessories for your phone as well. I'd give those a look too. So go to casetify.com/diretrip today to get 15% off on your order. Thanks to Casetify for sponsoring this episode. And now, on to the content. Just a heads up, parts of today's story are pretty disgusting. Today's story is about a kid named Dylan Redwine, a 13-year-old who grew up in southern Colorado. At some point during his childhood, his parents got divorced, and things were rocky to say the least. Once Dylan went into junior high school, he moved out to Colorado Springs with his mother while his father lived out in Vallecito. In a while, he and his mother were planning to move again, this time to Monument. In the meantime, Dylan would fly out to meet his father, Mark, from time to time, something he really didn't enjoy doing. The visits were court-ordered though, so there really wasn't much he could do about it. Dylan had an older brother named Corey, who noted on many occasions that Dylan had a very strained relationship with his father. It had been that way for at least the past 2 years, ever since a big fight broke out between Dylan and his father. This fight ended up ostracizing Mark from his then-wife and their 2 sons. It's fairly likely that, by this point, the feeling was a little bit mutual, and Mark wasn't thinking too highly of his son either. It was kind of one of the biggest things that impacted everybody's relationship with our father, Corey said. This strain was made much, much worse during one of the brothers' trips out to see their father, in which the both of them saw something that no kid, or human rather, should ever see. When using their father's laptop, they came across what Corey has called pretty graphic pictures of their father during what was supposed to be a father-son bonding trip. And pretty graphic is putting it lightly. The pictures consisted of Mark wearing lingerie and a diaper that he had filled himself, and he was eating from the diaper. I can't really think of any lighter way to get the point across for YouTube. Either way, the pictures were incredibly disturbing, especially for a junior high schooler to see of his father. Mark Redwine flew into a rage when his 2 sons unearthed the photos, which weren't hidden very well in the end. They definitely changed my opinion about our father, Corey said, who now believes that his father is and was mentally ill. The 2 boys, likely at their wits' end with their father, decided to confront him about the whole issue once more at some point. And in November of 2012, it seems Dylan took the initiative to do just that. One of Dylan's friends has since said that he really didn't want to go on this trip to see his father. After all, finding those pictures, how was he going to face his dad normally again? But it was Thanksgiving, and this was one of those court-ordered trips. If at all possible, Dylan at least hoped that he could get out of the house for a while and go stay with some friends in the area. He wanted to get out of that house for as long as he possibly could during this trip. "I remember it like it was yesterday," said one of Dylan's closest friends who had just hung out with him before his mother took him to the airport to fly out to his father's place. He really didn't want to go. I could see the fear inside his eyes. Dylan wanted to spend the whole night with a friend nearby, but his father turned him down. Instead, he planned to meet that friend the next morning as soon as he could. In a text exchange we can see between the 2 brothers, it's revealed that the 2 did save the pictures, likely to confront their father with later, or even to possibly use to get out of visiting him further. Dylan asked for the pictures, and then soon after, he fell off the face of the earth. "Dude, your dad is looking for you," his friend texted him the next morning. "Are you alright, dude?" However, there was no response. Mark Redwine had killed Dylan the night before. It still isn't known exactly how, but it involved both a skull fracture and a sharp force injury to the head. On November 19th, Dylan's mother understandably started to worry and reported him missing. Mark simply said that Dylan had vanished the night before and he knew nothing beyond that fact. "I was in tears," said a friend of Dylan's. "I had a sick feeling in my stomach and I just completely broke down." I think Dylan had a lot more than just pictures that he wanted to get across to Mark, Corey added. "He's just a sick person, but he's fully aware of his actions and he's fine with being that person." Mark was immediately named as a person of interest in Dylan's disappearance, but he fully denied any sort of involvement in the whole ordeal. However, the boy's mother, Elaine, had heard Mark saying some pretty disturbing things in the past. For one, he bragged that he would leave a body up in the mountains if he ever had to dispose of one, and in one particular argument he told her that he would kill the kids before he would let her have them. Soon after, the family did all they could to search for Dylan. Missing persons posters were posted all over town and all over the internet as well. However, the search didn't really bring up anything in the end. The following February, Mark and Elaine appeared on Dr. Phil, of all things, to talk about the disappearance of their son. On the show, Elaine searched for answers while Mark did all he could to maintain his innocence, insisting that he had nothing to do with the disappearance and didn't know any more than anyone else did. But even after all of this, Dylan was gone without a trace for over a year. In 2013, some of his remains turned up in an area not too far off from Mark's house, just small fragments of bone. This proved at bare minimum Dylan was no longer alive. But for the people closest to him, deep down they already knew that, as much as they tried to hold out hope. And then, 2 years later, a few hikers ended up finding his skull about 1.5 miles away from where the first bits of remains were found. An FBI profiler who reviewed the whole case ended up helping the police to finally arrest Mark in the end. "I simply wanted to look at everything I could look at and try to figure out who did this, and it was an inescapable conclusion that it was Mark," said the profiler, who refrained from mentioning the specifics of what led him to that conclusion. However, the court indictments painted a pretty clear picture as to how he was finally caught. An investigation had showed traces of Dylan's blood in Mark's living room, and a cadaver dog had picked up on his truck, where traces of blood were also found as well. Not only that, but traces of blood were found on the clothes that Dylan was last seen wearing. After a 5-year investigation, Mark Redwine was finally arrested out in Bellingham, Washington while out driving his truck, and was formally charged with Dylan's death, to be held on a $1 million bail while he awaited extradition back to Colorado. He was charged with second-degree murder along with child abuse resulting in death. He attempted to fight his extradition. "We're talking about a guy that's probably a registered psychopath narcissist," said the criminal profiler who worked on the case. "He thinks he is smarter than everyone else." However, luckily he wasn't successful in fighting the extradition. The profiler added, "There is no question in my mind that this case will go to trial. Mark will not plead guilty because he's a narcissist. He believes he can lie his way out of everything." He ended by saying that the likelihood that Dylan simply left Mark's home that night and never came back without meeting any sort of foul play at all was mathematically next to zero. Dylan's brother, Corey, wasn't shocked at the news. It was no secret that, from the beginning, Corey highly suspected that his father was behind the disappearance, given the events that led up to it. "It's exciting to know that justice is coming for my little brother," he said, saying that the arrest was bittersweet in the end. "I'm obviously excited. I believe they have the right man, but it's still sad that we even have to go through this," he said. In June of 2021, during Mark's trial, the prosecutors told the court during their opening statements that Mark, now 59, was sent into a violent rage when Dylan found the photos of him in the first place, noting that bringing up the photos once again likely sent him into yet another rage. The prosecutors didn't really press Dylan's friends for info as to why exactly he didn't want to go visit his father. That much had been apparent for quite some time. However, this friend did note, when the jurors weren't present, that the relationship between the two was, at the least, very strained, and at the most, pretty abusive. All Mark's attorney could do was try to push the claim that Dylan simply ran away from his home and that Mark knew nothing beyond that. They said that the teen had previously hitchhiked in the past, and vaguely added that he sometimes walked away from his problems. Testimony in the trial lasted about 5 weeks, as Mark faced a good 48 years in prison if the prosecutors were able to convict him. Then, in October of 2021, Mark was officially found guilty of the murder of his son. He was sentenced to those very 48 years in prison, meaning he'll likely never experience freedom again unless he lives to be well over 100 years old. Once again, thank you for watching my video. This is a case that I've wanted to talk about since before I even had a channel, but in doing research I came across the pictures of Mark Redwine and that kinda... yeah... Needless to say, I didn't want to look back at this for a very long time. If you found the video interesting, please give it a like, it helps me out in the algorithm, and if you like this kind of content, feel free to subscribe. I talk about crimes and weird, dark stuff all the time. If you want, go ahead and follow me on social media. If anything were to ever happen to the channel, that would probably be the only way you'd ever hear about it. And hey, if you want to support the channel even further, I also have a Patreon account which I keep down in the description below. And speaking of which, shout out to the top patrons. We have Mautaz Hack, Impalado, Stefan Jamie Kramer, Max Sword Guy, L, Rain Noir, Pao Yang, Alice Malice Tentacles, April Diamond, Starfade, Astral, Grack, Angie, Rick of Work in Progress USA, Sash Johnson, Marianne McCurdy, Buttery Frankus, Wafrans, Jules Latona, Arctic Cat, Alan Damiani, Adrian Lawley, Marsh, Rinsenstein, Kim Peak, Lux Alpaca, Charity, Scoochie Main, Jackie, and Mark Barnett. This has been your host Kyle, thank you, and good night.